Fit to Love, episode 56, grass-fed versus factory-farmed meats and fish.
Fit to Love is physical, emotional, and spiritual fitness to achieve the happy life you deserve. From exercise to cooking, relationships, and spirituality, you'll find all the inspiration you need right here with our host, JJ Flizanes.
Welcome, everyone, to Fit to Love Wellness Wednesdays. Today, we're going to talk about grass-fed versus factory-farmed meats and fish. And to educate us and inspire us and direct us in the right way, we have Chef Varouj. Chef V came to the realization that there is far more to food than the culinary aspect when he was diagnosed with non-celiac gluten sensitivity. Having made the shift to and reaping the benefits of the gluten-free lifestyle, he became a certified gluten practitioner and reignited his passion for nutrition. He now approaches food as medicine, combining his culinary education in Italy and 20-plus years in the culinary field as a chef, restaurateur, caterer, and consultant with the latest scientific research in the nutritional and dietary field. He provides coaching and consulting to help professionals and families repair damage caused by years of food abuse and to reach their health goals, regain their energy, lose weight, and take control of their health. He inspires and instructs them to create deliciously nutritious meals, all without dieting or feeling deprived. Welcome back, Chef Varouj.
Thanks for having me back again, JJ.
You're welcome. You know, we shop, and I hear it all the time because there's a disbelief, really, and a denial about what's happening in our food source. From the conversation we had on our last show with you, the hidden dangers in our foods. So if you haven't heard that show and you're interested in talking about genetically modified organisms and what is it and other dangers in our food, be sure to subscribe to the channel, but go back and find Chef Varouj's interview that we did for the show because it was really informative about certain foods that I didn't even know were high GMO crops. So today we're going to talk about the grass-fed versus factory farm because people want to get the most out of their money. They don't want to be spending all their money at the grocery store, and I understand that. So is it a real issue? What do we really have to be worried, or is it just hype? So address that, Chef Varouj. Is it hype, or is it a real issue between grass-fed meats and fish versus factory farmed?
Well, clearly there's an issue in there. But let me start by saying you either pay it up front or you pay later with your health. The issue with KTLA animals, which are basically, that stands for concentrated animal feeding operations. That kind of gives you an idea of what goes on behind the closed doors, right? First of all, they're not even treated humanely. They don't get the proper diet that they're created to eat. They're fed mostly grains, soy, corn, that most of the time they're also genetically modified. So there's a whole genetically modified aspect of it that goes into our system. Besides that, grains are actually inflammatory for animals as well as it is for human beings. So you are raising animals loaded with inflammatory marks. Guess what that's going to happen to you once you eat it? It just continues to create more inflammatory marks in your system, right? So that's one of the problems with the CAFO or factory-raised animals. They also are not kept in a proper conditions. They're routinely injected with antibiotics because of their condition that they're kept in.
Right.
Mostly they're injected or they're even mixed. The antibiotics are mixed in their feed just for preventative purposes. They don't necessarily have to be sick. So just imagine how much antibiotics they're getting in their diet. And that's ultimately coming on our plate.
So let's condense that down to what's the problem associated with factory farm. Number one, they're eating genetically modified corn and soy and starch and grain and inflammatory foods that then get into our bodies. And then two, because they're confined and they don't have space and because people don't want them to get sick, they give them antibiotics. So then the antibiotics are in them and then therefore get in us. So two good reasons why this is an issue.
They're also routinely injected with hormones and steroids just so they could build more mass faster. And again, that's passing on to us, especially the hormones. So there's many different reasons why. And again, because of their diet, the factory animals are more omega-6 fatty acids, which are pro-inflammatory. again, we're ingesting all of those and really creating more inflammation in our body.
You know, it's interesting that you reminded me about the hormones because and I know you know Dr. Alan Peters and Jeannie Peters in Nourishing Wellness, and there was a mom that brought a girl her daughter into, I think she was 8, into their practice and had asked them to look at her hormones. She'd been to the endocrinologist, and the endocrinologist said there was nothing that he could do for her. She was starting to get her signs of her menstrual cycle at 8 years old. And I know women that have gone through menopause at 45 or at 42 or 41. And it's happening more and more. And when Jeannie looked at her diet, this girl, she was drinking milk. And I know cows get injected with hormones and antibiotics all the time. And so it was the hormones in the milk that was speeding up her system to have her start developing and processing early. And I thought, if that isn't enough to scare people into, and of course the endocrinologist said, well, there's nothing we can do. And Jeannie's like, yes, you can. Get her off of milk. It'll slow it down. Her hormones can rebalance. So, yeah, definitely a big issue. And hormones injected into anything that we're eating.
And you know, that's not a single case either. That I think it's become the norm depending on the race. It's either from about 6 or about 8 years old, and I think in African Americans, up to 11 or 12 years old. For Caucasians and Hispanics are somewhere in between. They're becoming more mature much faster, I guess.
Well, it's definitely an epidemic.
Physically, I guess.
Yeah, and I know that also men's sperm count has gone down in recent years. And what are we attributing that to?
GMOs.
Right, and the hormones they're
Absolutely.
estrogen dominant. They're becoming estrogen dominant men, which is why there's low sperm. So where is that estrogen coming from? It's coming from soy. It's coming from
Correct. There's another factor there, pesticides. There's a direct correlation. Some of the pesticides actually mimic hormones in our bodies.
Wow.
Both for men and women. So it's really, that's in our issue that we have. That's in our good reason for us to go for more organic products versus conventionally grown products.
So what are the top 5 health side effects of these factory farmed meats and fish?
All right. So clearly it's inflammatory. We are ingesting all the pesticides that are being sprayed in their food, on their feed, prior to cultivation. And all the antibiotics, the hormones that we just talked about, the steroids or growth hormones that are being fed or injected with, we're all eating all of those products. Basically, it's going into our system. If you want to look at it from an environmental perspective, clearly they're not being raised humanely. You can't, when they barely have enough, for example, the chickens, they barely have enough room to expand their wings. Some of them are raised so quickly that they can't even stand on their own bones because they break because they're so out of balance, proportionally and nutritionally. We're not really getting the nutritional benefits from it because they're not grown properly. So we're not really getting that nutritional dense properties from the food that we're eating that we think we should get. And of course, you got the steroids, the antibiotics that we've talked about. All of those really affect on our system, our metabolism.
So, like we talked about, some of these low sperm count for men and premenopausal symptoms earlier, and menstruation cycles in women and girls earlier, and then of course there's probably some cancers involved with all this extra non-bioidentical hormones that's in our system, right?
Right, and then there's also the E. coli issues.
E. coli, okay.
So basically, the grain that they're fed, they don't, like I mentioned, they cannot digest the grains. Bovines cannot digest the grains. So what happens, it raises the acidity levels in their stomachs. That making it a perfect environment for E. coli bacteria to thrive. Compare that to organically raised or pasture-raised animals, the percentage goes from 20-some% to 0.3%.
Wow.
Of the case of E. coli contamination.
Wow, that's a lot. That's a very big difference.
Major difference.
Right. And so let's talk about that. Let's now that we've highlighted all the scary things about factory farmed animals and fish, let's talk about grass-fed and organically raised and humanely raised since we don't really want to turn everyone into vegans with this show
Nope.
today, because we are both, Chef Varouj and I, in support of eating organically grass-fed, humanely raised animals as protein sources, because biologically that's kind of what we're designed to eat, and it's the cycle of life, and it's not as necessary. So anyway, so let's talk about the opposite side and the beauty of how the others are treated and raised.
Well, clearly they lack all of the issues that we've talked about in the factory farmed animals, right? You have no steroids, you have no antibiotics, you have no inflammatory issues. They're actually raised eating grass most of the time. Now, they could possibly be supplemented with some grains, but at least if they're organic, they're not GMO grains. So it all depends. It doesn't eliminate the possibility of them being supplemented with some grain feeds, but it's very minimal. That's where you want to go when you shop. You want to shop for 100% grass-fed beef. That guarantees that they have not been fed any grains whatsoever. Now, grains obviously fattens them much faster. And some companies, they might choose to do that in the last, I think it's 18 months or so before slaughter. So they feed them with a lot of grains, so they fatten up much faster. They get bulkier. The major benefit is really the omega-3 fatty acids that pasture-raised beef have, and that's basically similar to the CLA, conjugated linoleic acid. And that's basically similar to wild salmon. So you're really getting the benefit of omega-3 acids, which you should have higher omega-3 acids in your system compared to omega-6 acids. The omega-3 are anti-inflammatory, so we want more of those. And clearly, you're lacking all the other issues. You don't have to worry about salmonella as much as or E. coli as much as you would in the factory farm animals. They are free. They're really getting all the nutrients that are being provided by the soil, by the earth. So they're living a more of a not as stressed conditions. So all of those benefits are really coming to us compared to all the farm-raised animals.
I got turned on to Organic Valley's pasture butter.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was Jeannie who told me that it's only, I think, May through September that they sell it, because the cows are out in the field eating grass, and they bring the milking stations to them. And so ever since then, I've been really pretty obedient about just eating organic farms pasture butter. And I really got that visualization that these are happy cows because they're bringing the milking stations to them. And they're just out there gnawing away at the grass and the sun on the hillside, and they're, living out their life, and everything is good. So I feel good about eating my organic pasture butter. And definitely the way I feel about what I'm eating is going to impact the way I also process and break it down. So
absolutely. And the nutrients that you're absorbing from it, or the lack of it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, ultimately, we're really eating for its nutritional value, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So you really have to consider what you're eating, what you're putting in your body, because ultimately that's the communication you're sending to your cells. You're either turning off cells or diseases, or really giving them a kickstart.
We've talked about, and I know you talked about the chickens and the state of the chickens, and we've talked about cows. And I've mentioned fish, and you mentioned the salmon, but let's go over quickly sort of like the pros and the cons. Like, so the con, like what's the negative effect of the factory farmed fish? And then, of course, the benefit of the wild fishes.
Well, they're very similar if you look at it from that perspective. They're really, even the salmon, for example, if you take that as an example, they're kept in a confined environment. Because of there's such a high concentration, they're also constantly fed antibiotics to keep them from disease. Basically, everything is staying in there. All their byproducts, their feces and everything else, it just stays in that confined environment, right? They're also fed on a natural diet. Salmon in the wild does not feed on grains or soy or corn. They feed on krill, anchovies, other little crustaceans, shrimp, whatever they find in the wild, right? So that's their natural diet. And because of that, again, you're paid say whatever you pay, $12 or $15, whatever it is, for a pound of fish that is farm raised, thinking you're going to get all the benefits. However, you're not, because now you just have a bunch of omega-6 amino acids. So you really are getting more inflammatory acids in you than anti-inflammatory amino acids. So again, it's kind of changed the whole property of the meat or the fish that we're eating. Again, they're fed antibiotics, so you're really getting the same kind of cycle of really bad inflammatory products that you're putting in your system, even though you think, well, I'll eat fish a couple times a week or 3 times a week, but you're not really reaping all the benefits.
And I hadn't really had that visual in my mind that you just said about their feces being in the pool with them and all the antibiotics being in the pool with them. And that's gross.
It's not the best visual you want to have.
Well, but when
it comes to food, but really that's the sad reality.
Well, it's not the best, but it's the most effective. I frequent Trader Joe's and Whole Foods, and that's probably where I go 98% of the time. And there happened to be someone who told me there was tri-tip on sale at Fresh and Easy for like $2 a pound. So I go over to Fresh and Easy, and they're both across the street from each other, like across the parking lot. You don't have to drive anywhere. You can walk from one to the other. So I went over to Fresh and Easy, and I'll never forget the day that I stood there with that tri-tip in my hand, and it was an inexpensive tri-tip, and I'm looking on the label for something that says natural, nothing. There is nothing. And I'm holding this piece of meat that, yes, is less expensive, and all I could think of is, I can't do it. I can't do it. I can't do it. I can't eat this. I don't know where it was raised. I don't know what the conditions were. I don't know what was injected into it. I don't know what it ate. And I don't care that I spend twice as much money, and I put it back, and I walk myself through the parking lot over to the Trader Joe's, paid 3 times as much money, but it said minimally processed. You know, it had like 7 different labels on it about quality of the meat and where it was raised, and it didn't have hormones or antibiotics, and it didn't eat GMO things, and it was organic. And I'm like, you know what? I understand, because when people are coming from a point of view of food from a money perspective, they don't want to go to Whole Foods and spend their whole paycheck. But yes, because you're looking at it, like you said at the beginning of this show, you either pay up front or you pay later. You're going to pay later with your health, or you're going to pay now. And when you start practicing and really putting your health as a priority and feeling and reaping the benefits of having amazing health when everyone around you is suffering from multiple illnesses and different symptoms that make them uncomfortable and miserable, I couldn't do it. And it was one of those like moments where I'm like, nope, I can't do it. I can't do it. And I'm just not even going to buy it. If I can't afford to buy the tri-tip at Trader Joe's, then I'm just not going to buy anything, because I can't eat this meat, not knowing what's in it and where it's been. So the feces in the fish tank is the perfect way to scare the crap out of people, literally, to eat wild or don't eat it. Because we are conditioned to believe that our food chain is the same as it was 30 years ago, and it's not. And unfortunately, these are some of the reasons why. And while you're not going to die from eating farm-raised stuff, but you're not going to thrive. And that will accumulate over time, and your effects and your side effects and your health will accumulate. It'll be a slow process, but you're going to degenerate and deteriorate until you're having major issues, and you're going to wonder why. And it was a slow process of these things kind of undermining your health. So
it's the cumulative effect. Definitely, that makes a big difference at the end. But also, I just want to, I don't want to scare everybody away from eating, farm fish. Let's say it's still better than not eating any, by all means. But definitely, you want to be aware. Once you become more aware, more conscious about where your food is coming from, what's in it, what went into the production of it, I think slowly you start to shift. You go, actually, I don't, like you mentioned, I'm not sure I want to eat this. I'd rather pay a couple dollars more and then really figure out where I'm going to get that money from. Shopping on budget, let's say. It's better to have some than none, obviously, because for some people that's the only access to meat or fish they have. So I don't want to discourage everybody, but definitely it's an option. That's a better option.
Okay, well, that's good. Power to those who choose to do it. I can't do it. I'm at that point in my life that I just... nope, won't do it. So so we're going to take a minute to thank our sponsors for the ability to have this show.
Do you want to look and feel years younger? Learn more about your hormone health and how to get properly tested. Sign up for the Healthy Hormone Kit at nourishingwellness.com. It features the essential tests you need to tell your doctor to order for you to learn more about your current levels. Plus, you'll receive lots of healthy eating and lifestyle tips to improve your hormone health naturally. Again, that's www.nourishingwellness.com. Want even more up-to-date recipes, product reviews, exercises, and mental stimulation? You can find step-by-step articles from top-notch experts on invisiblefitness.com/blog. If you're busy like me, you may want the convenience of having these articles mailed directly to your inbox every month. So be sure to register your name and email at the top of the page so we can make sure you don't miss anything. Again, that's invisiblefitness.com/blog, invisiblefitness.com/blog.
All right, Chef Varouj. So we now understand the differences. We've got really graphic, disturbing pictures in our minds of why we should stay away from factory-farmed everything as much as possible, and only when starving or really in a bad place eat them. But, what do we want to look for? So let's direct our attention to, and again, some of these things, like we talked about in our last show with GMOs, the biggest impact I think we all can make on the future of our food is with your dollar and how you choose to spend it. And spending it somewhere where you're getting cleaner products that are more natural and the way nature intended will have a higher demand, and therefore less and less of all of the negative stuff will start to minimize. So when we're going to the store and now we're buying meats and dairy and chicken and eggs, what are the top labels and things we should be looking for?
You definitely want to look for organic as much as you can, whether you're at the store or at the farmer's market. We're fortunate now where we live that we have farmer's market that allow many of the beef growers to sell their products there. These are all organic, certified, and grass-fed producers. So it's always to have a connection, if you would, especially at the farmer's market. Local places keep it local, right? Getting to know them, getting to understand their philosophy as far as how they're raised or how they treat their animals. Because most of these little farmers, they really are not into making the millions like their factory farmed or factory raised animals or operations are. But they care about what they put out. They care about their products. They care about their produce. They care about the welfare of their animals. So that's always a good start. However, if you don't have that access to that, really going to the store, look for grass-fed. You want to stick to 100% grass-fed as much as you can to maximize the benefit for it. Whether that is the butter that you're buying, whether it's just the meat, whether it's the chicken. Now, grass-fed does not really apply to chicken. You want to look for more pasture-raised. There's a bunch of different titles for the chickens, especially for the poultry. And really, you want to stick to mostly the pasture-raised poultry and really keep it as clean as possible. Yes, it costs you a little more initially, but really, once you start reaping the benefits, once you start feeling much better, you're ultimately saving a lot of money on health insurance and health bills and doctor's visits.
Okay, and eggs? What about eggs?
Same way, you want to get as much of the pasture-raised chicken eggs as you can. There's, again, same thing with chicken and the eggs. They have a bunch of different labels. Cage-free, which means really not much. Ultimately, they're not stuck in a tiny little cage, but they're still in a building with thousands of other ones. The ones that have access to pasture, it means really not much again, because they are kept in a confined space pretty much for the first 4 or 5 weeks. And they're kind of created a routine of they stick around. They don't even venture out. So labels such as they have access to pasture or access to open areas, it means really doesn't mean much really. So you want to stick to, again, organic, pasture-raised, and eggs and chicken, as well as grass-fed beefs and wild fish as much as you can.
All right. Very good. And so if someone wanted your help with all this stuff and figuring out, on a budget, could you help them put some meal plans together?
Absolutely. They could go on my website. That's culinarycreator.com. Or they could call me directly at 559-213-6121. and I'll be happy to help them, at least guide them to starting point, if nothing.
So why don't you repeat your phone number again?
That's 559-213-6121.
And all your information will be on fittolove.tv. So go ahead over there if you're listening right now on a handheld device or you're in your car. When you get to your computer, go ahead and log on to fittolove.tv. And if you've enjoyed today's show as well as Chef Varouj's other show, make sure you subscribe to the channel so that way you get updates on when the new shows get published and you've got access right away to the top experts in all these different fields to give you the information you need to know to be the best you can be. So thanks for joining us again today, Chef Varouj.
Thank you for having me again.
Get the hottest tips and latest trends for your business success with today's Innovative Woman magazine, a free print and online digital magazine. Claim your free subscription and get it mailed to your home or office today at today'sinnovativewoman.com.
Looking for an engaging and inspiring speaker? Does your group need a good jolt of positive thinking? Look no further than JJ Flizanes. Visit her site to check out her most requested topics and video examples. jjflizanes.com. That's jjflizanes.com.
The Fit to Love podcast show offers you 6 days a week of helpful content to achieve the happy life you deserve. Movement Mondays and Tasty Tuesdays are weekly video casts, while Wellness Wednesdays, Thoughtful Thursdays, Freedom Fridays, and Sexy Saturdays are audio-only shows themed every week to address your holistic life and needs. If the show inspired you, we would love for you to share it and subscribe. Thank you so much for joining us today. Head on over to fittolove.tv for recaps of every show, resources, and to join the community. That's FIT2LOVE.tv. Have a fit and fabulous day.